New York City is killing off its esports scene.
If you're unvaccinated, unfortunately, you will not be able to participate in many things.
What's going on? I'm Cello, and I've been holding esports tournaments in New York City since 1999. I've been playing in tournaments for years, and I've played in a tournament in almost every single borough, with the exception of Staten Island. Because, well, Staten Island. Nah, I'm just joking, Staten Island. You know I got love for you. I just couldn't resist. But in all seriousness, the esports scene in New York City was growing. Being in such a densely populated area meant that a small local tournament could get a better turnout than something much bigger in a less populated state. Unfortunately, the Resident Evil T virus that's going around is what's been messing with esports in NYC. Not necessarily the virus itself, but the mandates or the local government's reaction to it, I should say. We can argue all day about whether somebody should get or not. That's not what this video is about. It's about the mandates and the restrictions. I mean, why does someone need in order to go to an indoor restaurant, but it's perfectly fine for them to sit outdoors in something like this?
And here you have an outdoor dining system that has an internal air conditioner.
It's the same thing. It's another restaurant, just outside. For those new to esports, it costs money to host an event. You got to rent the location, you got to get games, consoles, controllers, PCs, and laptops if you want to record this stuff. And trust me, you want to record this stuff. And realistically, you can easily lose money on events if you haven't worked a way to borrow this stuff, or if you don't have it already. Locations are the big thing. You need a space large enough to hold all of your competitors and the spectators is going to come to watch. And there's a lot of people that just go to tournaments just to watch. If you don't have the money to rent the space, which is usually the case, what I've been doing the last 2 years, I usually approach the places that I'm working at, and like bars and restaurants, hospitality industry. I usually approach them and pitch the idea of hosting a tournament inside one of their locations, and they're receptive to it because it gets people in the door, people who might not know that place existed before. Now, this is where the restrictions come in. I know many gamers who don't want to, and I'm okay with that. I'm perfectly fine with that. The thing is, in New York City, in order to go into a restaurant, gym, or theater, whatever it is, you have to have. The restaurant industry is already dying. Like, thanks to these mandates, the restaurant industry is already dying. It's on its way out. I can tell you right now, from first-hand experience, the amount of people who have chosen to walk away from restaurants I was working at because of me asking them for a card upon entry, it's huge. It's actually huge. I mean, you could always fake the card, as many people do, right? But you know what? Realistically, people just don't want to do that. They'd rather just eat at home, not eat at that restaurant, or go to a location that doesn't have these ridiculous mandates. And there's a ton of places in New York City that are not choosing to discriminate based on a person's status. First, we had to deal with contact tracing. I get it. I had to deal with it for a previous job, but unfortunately, the place I was working for, the people who owned it, they weren't serious about it. One of our servers came down with the Rona, and she worked 2 of our busiest shifts, and so she exposed hundreds of people to the T virus. Basically, once she got the information to us, I was a manager at the location, so I approached my boss. I was like, hey, do you want me to start reaching out to the people for the contact tracing? And his response, I kid you not, don't worry about it. Bruh. That was my first job after the lockdown, and I was like, all right, this is how it's going to be going forward. I already know. I can see it, You know what? Other people I talked to in the industry said the same thing. If there was an exposure at their location, they weren't reaching out. They weren't reaching out to anybody via contact tracing. Nobody's serious about this. Nobody's policing stuff for restaurants. Even in regards to mask mandates in New York City, you had these officials telling us we got to wear them. And then you see the governor doing something like this. Or we're told, oh, stay home, only essential workers should travel. And then you see the bozo doing this.
Seriously, you guys have a park. You live in the middle of a park. You don't need to not essentially travel to Brooklyn. Come on, you won't even open roads for people of all backgrounds.
New York City is killing off its esports scene. It's killing off everything. I tried doing some esports tournaments this year. You guys know how much I love doing them. We had a new member join our family. And so that pushed things back early. Each place I I wanted to host a tournament I just happened to work at, and I approached the bosses about this, and like I said, they like that, you know, it gets people in the door, we get to host our tournament, the bar makes a little bit of money, bosses are happy, all good to go. But it comes back to people are not going to want to get just to go into a tournament, just to go into a restaurant, just to do whatever. People are opting out of it. They're not dealing with it, and they're not going to fake a card because they don't feel they have to. And you know what? I'm right there behind them on that. I struggle with doing an IRL tournament this year or doing it online again like I did last year for 2020. And unfortunately, the indecisiveness carried on way too long on my end. And here we are in December and no tournaments. I kept trying to make IRL ones happen because that's where Ben, you know, best in New York City, that's where Ben thrives. I think as these restrictions get tighter, I mean, kids are already required to get if they want to do things like musical theater, bands, sports, whatever, you know, after school stuff. And as of the other day, kids 5 and up have to in order to go into a restaurant. I don't know many that are going to subject their kids to doing it. Like I said, as these restrictions get tighter, it's going to drive more people away from New York City, in my opinion. There's already an insane amount of vacant businesses. Like they were slowly emptying out, and I think COVID was just like the straw that broke the camel's back to just like push these businesses out. You know, there's a ton of places that were around for 40-50 years that are just shut down now, you know. And it's not even because of death or anything like that. It's because of restrictions, mandates. So I won't be able to take Terry offline into a tournament in New York City because January 5th, the New York City local government, or the New York State local government is gonna vote on whether to give the governor powers to detain people and put them in camps if they are considered a public health threat.
That the Senate give immediately emergency powers to the Supreme Chancellor.
Meaning, if you do not get a COVID-19, you are considered a public health threat, and they can put you in a camp, detain you in a camp. But yeah, New York State is going to vote on a very similar thing January 5th. And realistically, from my point of view, or from my perspective, if that happens, tournaments in New York City for me are officially done. I don't think the esports scene in New York City thrives, and there's gonna be little to no scene, you know, going forward. And to be honest, that makes me incredibly sad. I don't know what needs to change, but something does. They're killing the playground. They're killing my playground. They're killing my home. Thanks for checking out this video. If you enjoyed it, give it a like, a subscribe, and actually let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, am I overreacting? Am I right? I'm curious to hear what you guys got to say on this whole take. Keep gaming. I mean, you've been gaming, right?
We know these mandates work, and we know people respond. Look, human beings are pretty predictable. If you say your paycheck depends on it, or your ability to enjoy life and go do the things you want to do, people will make the practical decision overwhelmingly, and they'll go get vaccinated. But we aren't pushing hard enough. We got to go farther.